last session about clarity. As we said, this is mubin, balagh mubin is required in Islam, things to be clear. So a small presentation. Almost anyone?
Okay. Almost anyone who has been a student can relate to the scenario of having a teacher whose knowledge of a subject approaches brilliance, but somehow is unable to communicate that knowledge to students. In this scenario, the teacher's knowledge essentially is useless to students because the teacher does not understand how to teach clearly.
Okay, this is, I experienced that, and some of you maybe has experienced what the teacher was from Taiwan, and basically he's smart. He published a lot of paper and he is good in his subject. But when he speaks, I could not understand anything. I have to take the course 3 times with him and I never passed because I don't know what he's talking about. So you don't want to be, alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Like that in khutbah, you can't do that because it's required. Islamically, clarity is required. Okay, go.
I already finished reading the slide.
In this scenario, oh, you finished? Oh, sorry.
So we can consider teaching to be clear if students' understanding of the material being taught is sufficiently similar to the teacher's intended meaning.
Say that again. Okay, that's the definition of clarity. What is it?
In other words, I'm teaching clearly if my students understand the material as I intended for them to
Okay, yes, I am teaching or I am talking clearly if my audience and listeners understood the subject the way I intended it. And this is something, a big problem, because people really, as I said, they understand according to their frame of reference, not the way you intended, and actually most of the time never. The audience, especially khutbah, they understand the way the khatib intended. No, most of the time is not. Either the clarity from the khatib, and the second one, people basically filter what they hear through their frame of reference. Right? Okay, next. In another word?
Yes.
Oh, you already did that. Okay.
This may involve understanding a concept exactly, or perhaps in advanced courses, understanding a general perspective or attitude, and not necessarily viewing the perspective or attitude in the exact same way as the teacher.
Yeah, now here we need to make it clear. What he's saying here, if you are a teacher, you want them to understand the materials the way you intended. But you don't want them really to believe what you believe. It is not necessarily that. But in khutbah, no. You want the audience to understand the subject the way you intended, and you want them to believe it the way you believe in it. Or stronger. If you are teaching secular subjects, physics, chemistry, you don't have to basically believe in what the teacher believes in. You have to understand the subject and pass the test. In the khutbah, it's required that not only understanding, believing in it and practicing it. Okay?
The purpose of this presentation is to introduce the concept of teacher clarity and provide several ways in which teachers can enhance their use of clarity in their classroom. Definition of clarity. Clarity can be defined as a process through which an instructor effectively stimulates the desired meaning in course content and processes in the minds of the students through the use of appropriately structured verbal and non-verbal messages.
Oh my God. Well, that's very complicated and very big one. Okay, defined as a process through which a teacher, a khatib, a speaker, effectively stimulates the desired meaning of the subject or the content and process in the mind of the audience. Through the means of deliverance, and it had to be structured verbally and non-verbally. The message had to be structured the way you speak it and also the way you act in it. Okay, so again, what is clarity?
As a process through which an instructor effectively stimulates the desired meaning of course content into the student's
desired meaning of the content in the mind of the audience using the appropriate means. Khutbah, okay?
Teaching clarity falls into 2 general categories: verbal clarity and structural clarity.
Alright, very simple. This is what we need to know. There are clarity basically divided into. Where is the brother? Number 1, verbal clarity, and number 2, structural clarity. Think about this. I'm going to pause. Clarity is 2 categories. 1, verbal. What does it mean?
The way you speak.
And second,
Structure.
what does it mean?
The way you organize your thoughts.
Okay. Now we are going to define each one of them. But we have to keep in mind verbal clarity and structural clarity. And right now we are going to deal each one of them. Verbal clarity.
3 verbal aspects of clear teaching include being a fluent speaker, providing good explanation of concepts, and using clear examples to clarify concepts. Of these 3 aspects, fluency has received the most attention from researchers.
Okay, so verbal clarity has 3 elements. Number 1, fluent speaker. Number 2, provide good explanations of those concepts. And number 3, use clear examples. So, the language, the explanation of the concept, and the examples into that concept. This is verbal clarity. And he said here the language is most influenced than other aspect. Okay.
Fluency involves the absence of vocalized pauses, etc., and vagueness.
And there are people many times, you mean what I mean, that is not accepted in the khutbah. Okay?
In other words, fluency enhances the clarity of a message through speaking smoothly and using concrete and specific terms. That's the same slide. Oh, no it's not. A lack of instructor fluency can lead to reduced achievement among students. Similarly, Khatib and audience. Students also have indicated that good explanations and clear examples are important aspects of clarity.
Okay, clarity is 2 categories, right? 1,
Verbal.
verbal, and second? Okay, verbal has 3 elements. What are they?
Fluency, good explanation.
And good explanation of the concept and good examples. We have to memorize this because clarity is the key point for anything you do. And he said that the fluency is the most effective one. Now, if the fluency is weak, what is the consequence?
You stutter a lot in how you speak and you don't convey the messages clearly.
So the achievement of the student is going to go low, and also the understanding of the audience. All right, we did that one. Call verbal clarity. Now we go to the structural clarity. What is it? Yes.
The structural aspect of clear teaching involves the use of previews, reviews, and transitions, being organized, using visual aids or skeletal outlines in which main headings are provided with space for students to take notes, and staying on topic, not getting sidetracked on tangents.
How many elements here? Count them. You read slowly and we'll count them.
Use of
Structural aspect of clarity teaching involve number 1.
Use of previews.
Number 1.
2 is reviews. 3 is transitions. 4 is being organized. 5 is using visual aids or skeletal outlines. 6 is staying on topic.
Okay. I want you to repeat those. Structural clarity, 6 element. Verbal clarity, just 3. Fluency,
Good explanation.
good explanation to the concept, and good examples. But structural clarity, 6 elements. Again, number 1,
Use of preview.
preview. What does mean preview?
Like giving a little, before you actually lay it out on the big column.
If you read story of the people of the cave, is the best example. 3 verses first give us preview. What is it? The whole story. And Allah said, فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى وَرَبَطْنَا عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ, and so on. So 3 verses, that's all. Then قَدْ نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ نَبَأَهُمْ بِالْحَقِّ. And then he give all the detail of it. And then by the end, they summarize it. So, preview, review, transition, and organized, visual aid, stay on the topic. Who can repeat them? Mahmoud. 6 elements of structural clarity. Repeat them, even from the board, I don't care.
Previews, reviews, transitions, being organized, visual aids or skeleton outlines, and staying on top.
MashaAllah, very good. But
Ooh, okay. The use of previews, reviews, transition, being organized, using visual aids or skeletal outlines, and staying on top.
MashaAllah. Good. Alright. That's somebody.
Okay, yeah. Somebody in 1963 found that not only do previews help students focus on the content to be covered, but previews help students develop an early mental framework for the material, which then makes the material easier to learn.
Okay, so just they develop, not just they understand that specific framework, means they are able to associate this concept with the whole subject. Okay.
In addition to previewing the content verbally, teachers can reinforce their previews by presenting the preview material visually. Someone else in 1985 noted that skeletal outlines provided to students before the class session enhance the clarity of instruction. Together, these approaches reveal the overall importance of organizing messages and making organization easy for students, listeners to follow.
Actually, that's what we're really thinking, to have this outline or review and preview on the screen. The Khatib, by the second khutbah, at the beginning of the khutbah, he will just put the title and preview and then shut it off so people focus and listen. So by the end of the khutbah, he will turn it on with the basically the summary or the review and the conclusion. And many places they use that, and it is good. So the Khatib pause and turn on the screen, and it will show the outline of the subject. Okay.
Outcomes of clear teaching. The benefits of the behaviors outlined above become more evident when examining the outcomes of clarity that have been identified from research. Early research conducted by Cruikshank and Kennedy in 1986, in which they asked students to describe the behaviors of clear and unclear teachers, is consistent with the aspects of verbal instructional clarity that have been outlined. In other words, students who consider their teachers to be clear report encountering teacher behaviors that are consistent with verbal instructional clarity.
Okay.
Research on specific outcomes of clear teaching using a variety of methods reveals that clear teaching is related to increased student learning, motivation, positive feelings towards instructors and courses, and lowered student anxiety during lectures.
We have to memorize this. So, clarity in khutbah or teaching has several results or benefits. Number one,
Increased student learning.
now good. Number one. Number two,
Motivation.
increase their motivation. Number three,
Positive feelings towards instructors and courses.
all right. And
4 is lowered student anxiety during lectures.
so there are four.
Yeah.
Sean, can you repeat them? All right. Number one,
Student learning, motivation, positive feelings towards instructor and courses, and lower student anxiety.
MashaAllah, Irfan. Can you repeat them? Clarity will basically have four major positive side effects besides understanding.
Is the learnings, student learnings, motivations, positive feelings, and
So when you give khutbah, don't you want them to increase in learning? Don't you want them to be motivated? Don't you want them to have a positive feeling about the khutbah? And you don't want them to be not in a state of anxiety. So that is, you can achieve all of that by clarity, all right?
The consistent positive outcomes of clear teaching suggest that teachers or speakers should make an effort to enhance the clarity of their teaching. How to teach more clearly. There are some specific things teachers can do when preparing and leading a class session to enhance the clarity of that session. This information primarily is aimed at lectures, but much of it can apply to other methods of
Okay,
instruction.
so here we're going to talk about clarity in giving lectures or khutbah. If you are using different means and technique, that's something else, but it can be applied, all right?
Organize a class session. Before expecting to teach early, we should be sure we have our thoughts organized on paper. This will provide a foundation for the other things we need to teach clearly. Don't be misled though. This involves more than just throwing some thoughts on paper as an outline.
Okay, so the number one what?
You should write it on paper before. Yeah.
All thoughts should be written on paper. Number 2.
We should isolate the 2 or 3 main points we will be discussing and be sure to list these points at the top of the outline so we will remember to preview them. Ideally, we will do this in the form of objectives. By the end of the session, students should be able to, and so then this will help both us and our students.
So at the top of the paper that you are using, at the khutbah or whatever in your head, these are here 2 to 3 only points. You put them there to remind you. Once you finish, you are going to review again and summarize and go over them again. Okay, that's number 2. So number 1 what?
Is organizing your thoughts on paper.
Good. Number 2?
Highlighting objective.
Yeah,
Okay, you are a good student. Okay.
Then, as we insert our main points, we should leave space so that we can add examples and explanations later.
That is number 3. When you write those, what do? You don't line them one next to the other. You write them with space between each. So in that space, you are going to insert the examples, the verses, the ayat, or whatever evidence. So number 3 what?
Is leave space between your points, for example.
Okay, so say them all again. Number 1
Is writing down your thoughts on paper.
and number 2.
Isolating the 2 or 3 main points.
Okay, and number 3.
Just leaving space between the points.
All right.
We also should add transitions between our main points so students will see the ways in which points are connected and so that they won't get lost.
So number 4 what?
Add
Transitions. And this is many khatib don't. They just keep, now he's already in separate subject or separate idea, and that is bad. You get to make it clear and to lead your audience in your transition. Number 1 and then finish. Then if you number, then they know. Number 2, then they know you are transition to second item. But if you don't have a means of transition, they don't know whether you're talking about the first or second or third. And we said only 3 points at all. Okay, so they have what? We said 4 means to enhance clarity. Number 1,
is writing down your
idea on your papers. Number 2,
is isolating the main points.
isolating the main point, 2 or 3. Number 3,
Is leaving space between
leave a space between them. Number 4,
transitions.
transition. MashaAllah. Huh.
Although information on transitions usually is included in basic public speaking textbooks, teachers or khatibs often overlook transitions as an important aspect of clear teaching,
Overlooked. What do you mean overlooked?
that they don't pay attention.
Though they are critical. Good.
Finally, be sure to include a review of the material at the end. Ideally, the review should involve students in some way or enable them to reflect on the material they have just learned.
So the last one is, what is it?
Make
The review by the end. And maybe kind of discussion. Alright, so I think that's the end of it. Oh, go ahead. Okay, let's summarize. We said verbal
structure.
clarity. And then structure clarity. Verbal clarity has 3 elements. Fluence.
Fluency, explanations, and examples.
Good. Now structural clarity has 6.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what is the definition of structural clarity? Or verbal clarity?
Verbal clarity is how you present the subject, and structural clarity is like how you organize the thoughts.
No. The definition what?
Why can't you ask anyone else?
No, I'm gonna ask you. Okay. To make your audience understand the message the way you intended. That is clarity. You make the listeners understand your message the way you intended. That is clarity. And it needs, as we said, verbal and structure. So structure, how many elements in it? 6. You, Sean, you told me. What are they? Oh my God.
Previews, reviews, transitions.
Let's go back to it. Oh my God, we went through all of these? Okay, that's it. What is it?
Previews, reviews, transitions, being organized, using visual aids or subtle outlines, and staying on topic.
Okay. Badr, what are they?
Okay, so now previews, reviews.
What are they? What are they? What is the name of these?
Structural.
Okay.
Alright. Previews, reviews, transitions, being organized, using visual aids or skeletal outlines, and staying on topic.
MashaAllah. Very good. All right, then he said there are means to help you be more clear. And we took 4. Anybody remember them?
Organizing.
Okay, organize your thought on a paper. Number 2,
Isolate them.
isolate the main point on the top. Number 3,
Leave space.
leave a space between them so you can insert. And number 4,
Transition.
and transition. Number 5,
Review.
oh mashallah, you are genius. Serious. You are brilliant. Where we were.
Last line.
Be sure to develop similar.
You're way ahead of where we were.
Oh,
Very good, all that.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, we were there.
That we finish this one. Ideally, the benefits of review. Okay. Next.
Teachers often make the mistake of thinking thoughts like, I understand this, so all I have to do is repeat it to students and they will understand it.
And also Khatib, really. Most of us, well, I mean, here, our Khatib, all of us, me, and Sam, and Ahmed, that's how we do it. I understand it so very well, I'll just get up there and I know the verse and I know the meaning and translation and all this hadith, so I can get, well, that is bad. I understand this, so all I have to do is repeat it to the listeners, they will understand it. Okay?
This may work for basic concepts, but eventually a teacher with this attitude will confuse and frustrate the students.
What's gonna confuse them?
The not being able, or not giving examples or explanations and just saying that they understand it, so the students should understand it as well.
Okay.
A number of things must be taken into consideration as we add examples and explanations to our outlines.
Number 1.
We should consider our students' interests, prior knowledge of the content being covered, and related knowledge that might be relevant to what we are teaching.
Okay, apply that to the khutbah.
Talk about,
Here he's talking teacher student. So let's khutbah and khatib.
talk about things related to the community.
So basically you have to search for their interest, the community interest. And you have to connect what ideas or deliverance you can have to be serving the other interest. Okay? Number 2.
We should develop explanations that are relevant to what students know and understand. We should use examples that will make sense to them.
And you remember I heard in the morning some examples. So if it is not based on their understanding, basically it's going to lead them to, as I said, visited hellfire, found majority in hellfire are women. All right, well, why? And then, so it got to be basically taken in consideration their interest, what they need, not what they want. They need to learn this, you get to deliver it. But the second one is you have to base it on their knowledge, how much they know of the subject, or you have to prepare them all the way to the point where you want. That's what they do in the school. The teacher first review and do assessment and do a test before even start the class to know where everybody stands, so they can teach based on the level of the student. Okay, next.
An example of a poor explanation is a stereotypical physician who tells a patient he or she has a gastrointestinal disorder rather than telling the patient that he or she has a stomachache.
Good doctors. sounds like his dad. It's on the tape. We're gonna show it to you. Okay.
Similar to physicians with their patients, teachers must phrase explanations and examples in a language that is at the student's level.
Okay, examples at their level.
The above example about the physician works only because most people reading this article have had to ask a physician to clarify confusing terminology, or because it is an example that is relevant to readers' experiences. Be sure to develop a number of examples so that if one example only partially clarifies something, another example or two can reinforce it.
Now, this is needed in the khutbah. You can see in the Quran many examples when there are areas need to be emphasized, especially the Tawheed of Allah. Many examples. There is no limit to how many examples of that. Okay?
Keep in mind that activities such as role plays or simulations can also serve as examples and
Yeah, we
explanations.
can do that in the khutbah. All right.
If we're teaching a group think, we can make the concept much more clear if we enable our students to actually experience group
What is groupthink?
thinking as a group.
Like what?
I don't
Discussion.
Like you and Noor and Sean. That's it. That's our Badr and Badr and Mahmoud. That's because they are on the same level. So you teach one or two, it will be the same thing. Okay.
At this point, we will have a fairly organized and effective lecture on paper. We still need to do a few more things to ensure a clear cut.
Okay, by this now we already put the ideas and space and organized them and selected the good ones on the top and we inserted all the examples and the transition were there. So it's almost ready, but still there are things to make it more clear. Now what? Number one.
Clarify information visually.
Okay, so you might need to use visual things.
Whether using a blackboard, overhead, PowerPoint, or skeletal outlines, we can help our students follow along and comprehend what we're teaching if we give them a way to follow us visually.
And why? In the previous lecture, what we say? People gather information
Through site 88%.
88% through visual. So if it is not visual, you have lost. Okay, number two.
Be verbally clear. This behavior can be difficult and it may take some time to develop, but there's one tactic that can help us improve being verbally clear. This tactic is to become comfortable with silence. Rather than filling your pause with ums, try to remain silent until you have found a way to explain
Right.
the point.
This technique is so critical. All right, learn to pause. Instead of saying, and you mean what I mean, it is so. Don't feel it. You don't have to continue. If there is something you said, not just pause. Actually, that is the best way to draw the attention of the audience. And so, say the technique. Well, we have to know this. The technique is
Being verbally clear. Comfortable with silence is the tactic.
comfortable with silence instead of.
Instead of filling it with ums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that clear? So that's important. Rana?
One way to improve this behavior is to practice pausing when you know what you were going to say, so that it is easier to pause when you are either lost or if you are trying to explain something that might be confusing.
Okay. This is the technique. I know what is next. I pause purposely. This is to draw attention. And second, I practice to pause even when I don't know what is next. Okay? Next.
Conclusion. At this point, our task is to be clear. Be organized, use previews and reviews, use transitions, have several good explanations and examples, use hands-on activities, provide visual aids, and be fluent. Unfortunately, it can be easy to lose as students in all of this. One drawback to being clear is that we may become more rigid in our teaching. When students want to explore something in greater detail, thereby throwing us somewhat off track, we may feel the need to get back to the outline to cover the necessary points. However, we should remember that clarity ultimately is about enabling students to develop an appropriate understanding of the material.
And that is happening to the khatib. One behavior or one look in the audience, it can throw the khatib off the track. Okay, somebody looking at me with glare and looks like basically I read they are mad or angry or they are unhappy or maybe it is offensive to them. Or you start thinking about that and forget the khutbah and the place and the audience who are waiting to follow. So some messages that is not verbal. Basically, you can get, and you get a lot of messages when you are there from the people around you, or somebody basically sleeping and her head like this. You forgot, wallahi, where you are. You didn't know what I was talking about. Just by seeing someone, their head is falling, sleeping. So you ask internally, whom I'm talking to? Where I am and where these people supposed to be sitting here listening to me? Okay.
Therefore, it is important to remain responsive so students can be flexible, while still sticking close enough to the outline they have created.
Now, how are you going to be responsive in the khutbah? to something like this. Yeah, okay. Change the tone, pause. You have to use something where you are going to draw attention of those giving you the wrong message.
If we achieve this balance, we will enable our students to understand our material in a way that actively involves them. And based on what is known about the outcomes of clear teaching, it is likely that we will be pleased with the results.
Who will be pleased with the presentation finished? Assalamu alaikum. All right. Jazakumullah khair. You can stop it. Now, time for one of you